Well, we'll call this meeting to order. We will start with an opening prayer, and that'll be led by Ellen Weldon. We can all stand.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful day that we have today. We thank you for the fine food that we have to eat. We also thank you for the privilege of living in this country where we're still in the land of the free and have free exercise of our own religious beliefs. We ask that you share what knowledge you have for us. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. If you hold on a second, I'm going to try to stop that background noise before we do flight.
All you have to do is say
Okay, we got somebody on the trail of that, so we'll continue on. We'll probably have it shut down in a few minutes. Okay, flag salute, led by our oldest veteran present. Tonight, that's Glenn Perdue. Take it away, Glenn.
I pledge
Allegiance
allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and now the fun part. We are going to do a patriotic song, and we have a song leader here with us tonight, Kathy Roush, who happens to be my guitar teacher. I have had 2 lessons. Kathy, why don't you come up here beside the flag, and you come right here, then you and I can both read off the same song sheet.
That'd be great.
There we go. And now, Brian, can you see her just fine, or maybe Ellen, maybe you want to step here?
There is someone standing in the way.
There you go. No problem at all. There you go.
There you go.
Okay. Can you see this? Okay, too. My country is of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. All right. Well, let's give Kathy a round of applause. Thank you, Kathy. Very good. I enjoyed that better than ever before. So we'll have to do this again. No doubt about it. All right. Office holders, I believe, Glenn Perdue, are you a state chairman?
No,
not state chairman, but you're a county chairman.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Anybody else an officer? Art, are you an officer of anything? All right. All right. I'm the director of the Kansas Coalition for Life, and Kathy is the owner of a music business. And you have any other office holders? Anybody else? Oh, are you a precinct committee man?
I am the post surgeon for VFW 3115.
Outstanding. Very good. And your name?
Aaron Van Rees.
Aaron. Okay.
Yeah.
Aaron Van Rees. Now, I noticed in that name the V is always capitalized, and many times when we have the vans, if they come from the Dutch part of Europe, it's normally a lowercase v, but what's the word on that?
My family, I'm from a Dutch community up in Iowa. Both my father and my mother's side are Dutch. And in the States, it's always been capitalized. In Holland, it's not usually.
Oh, okay.
I think
Okay.
it's more of like an American thing.
Oh, okay. Well, I can just switch my computer over because half of them are lowercase v's and half of them are uppercase. So very good. Very good.
So that's
All right.
as far as I know, at least. I could be
Very
wrong.
good. Well, you were born and raised here in Wichita,
Yes.
or what? Very good.
I'm sorry, no, I'm from Iowa.
Oh, you are from Iowa?
Yes.
Okay, so born and raised, how long have you been in Wichita?
Since 13.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So born and raised in Iowa, and you moved down. I was born and raised in North Dakota. Came the same direction.
Okay. Moved down to Lawrence in 05 for undergrad. Was in Kansas City for a while, then came down here for grad school.
Are you familiar with Fairfield, Iowa?
Yes.
Okay. We had a member who's no longer current. She dropped off the list. But she spent so much time in pro-life work in Kansas that she joined the group. But she has been in ill health, and she's been back in Fairfield. But you're familiar with that town?
Yes, it's not far from where I grew up.
Okay, very good, very good. So our Iowa connection there. All right. The minutes that we have are on a very well done videotape that Brian posted take a look at it. I'm not sure, when did it go up, Brian? I didn't really know it was up until today, and I looked at it.
I started uploading it yesterday.
Okay, so I didn't come to it any too early, and I think I was the first person, you know, that nobody else had looked at it yet, so I was the first person on it. But it's very well done for anybody that wants to direct a friend or someone else there. I'm glad to have these because we're going to be doing some mailing and some fundraising and trying to get more members through Facebook and U.S. Postal Mail, and we will direct them to those videos if they want to take a look at what goes on at these meetings. All right, so there's no approval of the minutes. I mean, that's what's there is there, so we don't have to have that approved. On the back of your agenda, we have a treasurer's report, and nothing novel to report other than that we went down a little bit in our funds, but not by a whole lot. Last month we ended with $881.43, and this month we got through with everything and all bills paid, and we're at $835.60. So pretty much stayed fairly steady there. I will entertain a motion to accept the treasurer's report as printed. If anybody would like to make that motion. Art, will you make that motion? Art is making that motion. Glenn is seconding that motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. That motion carries. Okay, so we are already on agenda item G, and this is the time when I introduce Gloria. So I'm really honored, Gloria, to have you here. I'm sorry I don't have a room packed full, but I can't control that, you know. And so, if I worried about that, you know, we wouldn't even have these meetings. So I'm not worried about it. I like it being on video. You know, someone could watch that a year from now and enjoy it as much as if they were sitting here now. Gloria is an Emmy-nominated and AP award-winning journalist for the Sentinel. That's the Sentinel online newspaper. This is, of course, Gloria Van Rees. Started her career in sports broadcasting, and after reporting all over the world, she started her news career in Virginia. In 2014, she moved to Wichita to continue her journalism career. She has a bachelor's degree in international relations and a master's degree in military history. Now that would be an interesting person to talk to. At the Sentinel, Van Rees focuses on the economic landscape of Kansas. Let's welcome Gloria Van Rees.
First and foremost, I'm actually going to pass some of these out. These are some of our pamphlets from the Kansas Policy Institute. Now, when I call people and I say I'm with the Sentinel, they're always like, who? The Sentinel was actually founded a few years back. It was just recently purchased by the Kansas Policy Institute, I think about 6 months ago. Do you want one, you're good? The hubby's fine. Yeah. And only recently actually has the Sentinel expanded to Sedgwick County to cover this metro area. We've had offices in Kansas City for a while, and then we also have a reporter who covers stuff out of Topeka at the State House. So I'm actually relatively new. I've been here for about three months. Well, not in here in town, here with the Sentinel. My background, I was with Channel 10 for a few years. And then I wanted weekends to be able to actually see my lovely husband. So I now work freelance, and I actually started covering economics actually before I worked for the Sentinel. One of my major things I do as a freelancer is I'm also the managing editor of a blog that focuses on the Chinese economy. So I do that in addition to this. So I have kind of a wide scope, but it all really centers around the economy. So that tends to be the areas where I drill down the most. So tonight, when they asked me to talk, I said, well, let me go over our legislative policy guide, which is something that KPI puts out before every single session, kind of saying this is what we're going to focus on. Now, the Kansas Policy Institute is a think tank. It promotes research and education from experts down to the regular person. And one reason I actually bought the Sentinel a few months ago is because they weren't seeing the kind of news stories that were important to them in the news. There was a lot of local stories and feel-good stories and stuff like that. And having worked in TV journalism, economics doesn't really play very well on television. So they wanted to really have a place where people could actually see the stories that really matter to them and do what they wanted to do. And it's also a place where we use our platform to actually hold media accountable. A lot of NPR, public radio will fact check them, make sure that they're actually, what they're putting out to the public is in fact what is going on. So to that end, I'm going to start off with this legislative policy guide. Now, one thing we do is we focus on the economy and, can I lean on this?
You sure can.
We focus on the economy and education. The reason education, and that is the only really social issue, quote unquote, that we cover. We don't do death penalty, pro-life. We don't really cover that unless it has an economic angle or something involving taxpayer money or something like that. And even then, we usually only cover that from a taxpayer angle. We cover education because it is a huge part of taxpayer money goes to those. A lot of taxpayer money goes to schools because they're public schools. So that's one reason we cover that. And to that end, if we start off with point 1 of our policy guide, and I should say that these are not numbered in importance, it's simply the 5 things that they picked. With the legislature is actually coming back for the veto session starting May 1, so this is actually pretty good. A lot of the bills that we've worked with state senators and representatives to get through or promote, they're coming back for the session to actually hopefully sign some of them into law and kick out the ones we don't like. Starting off with, we have seen a budget crisis, which I'm sure you guys all know about, the state budget. But we've also seen a stagnant economy. And one thing here locally in Sedgwick County, I'm actually working on a story this week involving something called the misery index. And that is basically where you take consumer price index, housing, employment, and you kind of roll it all together into one big index number. And Wichita is actually the worst for being pretty much the worst in Kansas compared to Lawrence, Topeka, KCK. In terms of cities, equal in size in Kansas, Wichita actually has the highest number, and we don't want that. So that tells us that the Wichita economy is not doing as well as people would like to say it is, as much as City Council likes to spend money on baseball stadiums because they say we have the money when we know from these indexes and these numbers that Wichita does not have the economy that it likes to think it has. We also are comparing the local economy to regional neighbors, Tulsa, Oklahoma City, and Omaha, and again, Wichita has the highest number. So this is not good for us to know. So to that end, the main reason for the Sentinel is for the fact that we can do stories like this and really highlight these numbers that really don't get airplay, they don't get put down in print, and we can really speak to people about them. We can speak to economists, we can speak to really man on the street and really kind of get what's going on there. And that will be coming up shortly, just FYI. So when it comes to school funding, full disclosure, I don't do as many of the school funding stories as my counterpart. She lives in Northeast, just outside of Topeka, so she does a lot more of the school funding stories. But one thing we've noticed when we've covered school funding stories is that we do tend to get a lot of blowback of, if you do school funding stories, you must be anti-children. And nothing could be further from the truth. You probably heard that. You hate children. No, nothing could be further from the truth. Because one of the things about school funding is that if in the Kansas Constitution they mandated that schools be paid for, they must be paid for appropriately. But what does that mean? Do we just give them a blank check and say fund the schools? Or do we actually put something in there that says it has to match what the output is? And you can see actually, if you see on point 2 here, we have a great chart in here, that spending has actually outpaced inflation since 1992. It's the bottom line. Spending has actually increased inflation. But if you see, reading proficiency has not gone anywhere. So logically, by an economic standard, if I'm spending a lot more money on something, I should get a lot more of something back. And we're really not seeing that. We're not seeing a return on investment, which is kind of an odd thing to say. when you're talking about learning in kids, but there is a return on investment of if we're putting more money in, we expect to get something out of it, and we're not getting better grades, we're not getting better scores. So that's one thing that we tend to look at, and we focus a lot on these, is regardless of how you're being funded, regardless of, we really want to know what the outcome is and to make sure that we're getting a payoff there. Yes?
Do we take questions now or wait until you're finished?
Wait till I finish, yeah. Yes. And then the famous Medicaid expansion is number 3. Now, there was a vote on Medicaid expansion that is going to be taken up in the veto session, so we don't really have a final sentence on that for this session. We are curious. My compatriot actually emailed everyone who voted yes to expand it and said, okay, here's what you say it's going to cost. I think it's like $7 trillion or some amazingly high number. He said, how do you plan on paying for it? Two people got back to her. One got back to her with, I believe it was a no comment, and then the other one just said, we're looking into it. You know, there wasn't a strong answer as to how we're actually going to find the money. Because here's the thing, taxpayers aren't a bottomless pit of money. Here, raise my taxes. No one wants that. So where's the money actually going to come from? And that's one of the key caveats that we're kind of the kid in the fairy tale of the Emperor's Clothes who raises their hand and goes, he's naked, guys. That's kind of what we do. We point out that you don't have any more money, so where's this money going to come from? And that goes into something that that I've actually done a lot of work lately researching a term called rent seeking, whereas politicians like to fund things that they can have ribbon cuttings that they can say jobs are coming to, but when in fact when we look into it, they don't actually do anything for the economy. So we've done some research into retail space that has been built by the city, financed by the city, but retail is a dying sector, so when you're telling me that you're building retail and it's bringing jobs, you're actually bringing jobs that are going to soon be outdated. So the payoff is not really there. Okay. Now, protecting worker freedoms. Every single legislative session, this most recent session, I've probably done 4 or 5 stories on workers' rights, prevailing wage. In every single session, they want to bring in repealing Kansas as a right-to-work state, making it a union state, and I did stories on it this one. I know last year my colleague did stories on it, and these are things that are constantly coming back up of union money is actually looking to make Kansas a union state. And Kansas has been a right-to-work state since the 50s. I think it was 54 they passed it, and it became law in 55. So it's been a right-to-work state for a long time, and a lot of people want to change that. And to that end, we've also seen the Supreme Court ruling of Janus that actually changed a lot of how people actually pay for union dues. You can be a government worker now and not actually have to pay pay a union due, whereas you used to have to be required to do that. So we're seeing a lot of that around the state of actually union numbers are actually contracting. One of the areas that has the strongest union in the state is actually teachers. And teachers, because teachers, where there's government funding, there typically is a union. So that's also something that we tend to keep in our crosshairs quite often. And then the 5th one is amending the Constitution to prevent courts from setting school funding. When the schools went back to, the Constitution is actually dealing with this right now. I read the reply briefs from the plaintiff and also from the state involving the school funding of the money coming back in, and is it equitably funded now? Is that there's actually a push now to amend the Constitution that they want to say that the state gets to set it. So we're actually looking to change that so that the Constitution doesn't say it has to be set at X% or X this. So that way it's peeling it back so schools have more freedom to actually say how they want to be funded. But then the parents ultimately have more money, not more money, more say in their child's education. So I think I talked really, really fast. I'm so used to just trying to get everything out. So, to that end, questions?
Okay, Alan, you go ahead first. You have a question, obviously.
Actually, I've got a few, but
Go for it.
Well, take one first, and then we'll give everybody a chance for one, and then the twosies.
okay, so you said that you're owned by the Kansas Policy Institute.
Yes.
So do you get your information on school funding from Dave Traber?
He's my editor, but no, most of our stuff actually, we do open-ended research. So we basically take our topic and then find it.
Well, Dave's got the reputation for knowing more about funding
Oh, he's-
schools in Kansas than anybody.
He's incredible. You pull his string and he just goes and goes and goes. But he's great as an editor because then he fact checks immaculately well. He's very good at that. But when it comes to where we have to pull our stuff from, he doesn't actually tell us one way or the other. And there are some that's actually, we've had an idea about something of how, oh, it's going to be like this, and then in research it actually comes out to be something completely different and actually counter to what the Kansas Policy Institute was actually their stance. And they've actually, through actually having the Sentinel, they've actually changed some of their stances on stuff. So when we've actually figured out actually what's going on and where money is coming from, but also how it impacts workers. One was the workers' comp laws that were changed a few years back.
2011.
Yes, it's currently in front of the Constitution, currently in front of the Supreme Court, and it's probably going to be ruled unconstitutional. And it actually was a Democratic representative from Sedgwick County. I can't remember his name.
It's the Johnson case.
Yes, but the legislator in the Kansas House who's pushing to get it repealed is from here locally. But then Chris Kobach, who said this actually nullifies a worker's Fourth Amendment right to due process, because when you trade that off. Yeah.
This is a good friend of Keith Marks, who's from Kansas City.
Oh, okay.
They're hunting buddies.
Oh.
So, as Secretary of State, a lot of people thought Chris had no business getting involved with this. He was doing this a favor to Keith Marks.
But he does present, because he actually spoke to the court, and he did put out a very good Fourth Amendment case of specifically it has to do with I can't remember the name of it, but it's a specific rate at which something is automatically paid out. And so for a lot of surgeries it's knowledgeable.
Guides.
Pardon?
They're challenging the AMA guides for the evaluation
Yes.
of impairment under work comp.
Yes. Yeah. And the only person for it, I couldn't find anyone else except for the NFIB. NFIB was the only, and it's the National Federation of Independent Businesses. Everyone else was like, we have no problems.
Well, but
Yeah.
the biggest lobbyist, of course, is the Kansas Chamber, and the other one is the Kansas Self-Insured Association. They're very influential in work comp issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gloria, if I could ask you the next question. Who owns the Kansas Policy Institute? They own you, or they own your employer, which is the paper. So who owns the Kansas Policy Institute, and are they active in all 105 counties?
Yes. Well,
Do they have an active presence?
no.
No. Okay.
No, we have offices here locally and then in Kansas City, Kansas.
Okay.
However, the Sentinel would cover stories in all counties.
105.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
nonprofit.
Yeah, we're a nonprofit, independently run think tank. However, there are a network of think tanks. We get a lot of our stuff from the Cato Institute, and so, but we're not
How many
owned by
employees
anyone.
total are we looking? You know,
I think there's like 8 full time. There's
Okay, so
there's not many.
This is Dave, and then Hathaway. What Ann? No, not Ann. It's Ann Hathaway's daughter, I think, right?
Yep.
Huh?
Ellen.
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 Is
Yeah.
her mom? I think her mom's name is Ann, but I'm not sure.
And maybe I'm not sure.
It is.
Ellen,
It is. Is that the
and
one?
then,
Okay, because I know Ann and her mom. Goes showing
Yeah.
my age here. But,
It's Dave, Ellen, James Franco, and then
and you are the new one, huh?
I'm the new one. Yeah, there's a very few amount of us. Yeah, very small amount. And then we just launched on Tuesday the Kansas Justice Institute.
But you guys have more authority for 8 people. I mean, you guys change more in Kansas law and have for a long time than a representative or
And
a-
that comes down
or
to
a senator.
research. Yeah,
Huh?
that's all.
Just because of the knowledge
Yeah.
that you don't have. So
Yeah, I think we all wear glasses.
Maybe that's it. I don't know.
Pouring contests. today.
Okay, so that was my 2 questions. Who has the next one? Glenn, go ahead.
Yep. You said that your graph shows that education funding has increased faster than inflation. But what about the sports component? As compared to education, the sports component for sports facilities and sports programs and all that, has there been any study putting that on a graph as to funding for that as compared to funding for education?
You know, I don't think it has. Yeah, we have not actually. You're actually giving me a great idea right now. Because I know Keisha keeps track of that. But I'm not sure how, like in the pool of money that USDs get, like how they partition that. And I think they have a yardstick of like how much at least has to go to basics, and then anything above that can go elsewhere. But yeah, that's actually a great idea.
I don't remember if the legislature passed legislation saying that education had to be funded first. It seemed like they either did or intended to, but to me, that they should fund education, and if they have money left over, fund sports.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah,
Very
that's
good.
very true.
Go ahead, Art.
Well, I'm going to add to that question. I know I have a granddaughter that is a junior in high school this year, and unlike when my young days going to high school, we had what we're seeing now is traveling all over the place for golf tournaments, bowling tournaments, soccer tournaments, baseball tournaments, football, basketball, and all the rest. And that just seems like a substantial expense because of all the traveling involved that goes on in those programs. And I really wonder if it's not being overdone. Plus the fact that the school facilities, the newer school facilities are kind of like mega churches, mega schools. And there's so much being spent. I know at Clearwater we closed down one building several years ago, built a brand new high school, and that student population, the first 5 years after that was built, went down and didn't substantiate the building of that new school. I just wonder, can we get to a place where there's some kind of line item public accountability to that?
I don't think you would do that at the state level. It could very easily be said that the rent seeking that we see in conjunction with our baseball stadium down the street here, that city politicians really push for, that in smaller counties where high school facilities are where people spend their Friday nights and so on, that it could very easily be a version of rent seeking for local small towns and counties to push for, because they don't hold there's this thought that if you pay, $20 million for a sports complex, that in 10 years it's still going to be worth $20 million, and it really isn't if there's no actually demand for the use of the building. Homes maintain their value, farms maintain their value because there's a demand for the use of that place. In a lot of sports facilities,
There's not.
when the team goes, your building's worthless. The land may be worth something, but the building's worthless. And so I think a lot of counties are starting to realize that, their big facility that they put up, that they got the pictures taken in front of and all that, really, in the long run, actually, they end up paying a lot more for. But I think people are just kind of waking up to that now that sports stadiums, as recipients of star bonds, whether professional or for schools, it's kind of falling out of fashion. It's not quite there yet, but it's beginning to. Yeah.
Gloria, in your talk, you mentioned the misery index.
Yes.
I have a question on that. Is this similar to the national misery index where it's tied to inflation as well?
Yes.
Or was this just something local that KPI came up for Wichita?
No, that was actually done by.
So, I'm assuming inflation would be the same across the board in Kansas, whether it's Lawrence
The index factors in inflation, jobs, all of that.
But is inflation equal throughout Kansas, or is inflation different?
I actually haven't looked at those numbers specifically as they relate to that. I've been doing I've been looking at the consumer product index and the producer products. So I haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, that's fine.
When the story comes out, I'll send it
Good
to you.
answer. Okay, good answer. I'm interested in economics as well. I took a little bit of economics
very cool.
in college. Okay, so one other question. you mentioned in passing during your talk, you said something like retail, it may not have much of a future. I'm assuming that's because of so much online
Yes.
shopping. So
Yes.
where do you think, if you were the owner of a retail store, or we're gonna set up a retail chain or something like that, or build a new town west or something, what do you see in your outlook for the future of retail? Is it going to be by the wayside and everything's going to be delivered by FedEx?
I don't think it is necessarily. I think a lot of stores need to get creative in some of the more successful ones that we've seen grow actually have actually kind of used their retail stores as almost marketing tools,
Right.
as in to showcase
Delivery
their
points
products.
for one. To say
Yeah,
one.
or
That's
to
a great one.
showcase their products. So I think it really depends on what you're selling. I think a lot more people want an experience when they go shopping now. They don't necessarily want to just have to go get something. And we're seeing more and more of like it's experience places to go. Yes.
Well, just
Go ahead,
adding
go
on to
ahead.
that,
No, it's
there's
fine.
been a lot of, in the news about, I'm going to coin a new phrase here, porch lifting versus shoplifting.
Well, that's true, yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard now the shoplifting in the California and Seattle and these towns that are welcoming the drug addicted, and they have these whole communities of tent dwellers that are out now just living off of the retail stores, going in broad daylight. They'll grab a handful of clothing and steal them and walk out and even push down the employee that's trying to stop them from getting out the door with them. And just the drugs are so cheap now, they can buy enough to get them high for one day at $10. Whereas 10 years ago it would cost $1,000 for that much drug. And now it looks to me like retailers are getting hurt from both ends. The internet is taking a lot of their business away, and then setting up a store, it's like you almost need an army to protect it.
Well, and a lot more businesses are going into, like, you have to have a web presence in order to be in retail now. So people need to be able to see their product before, or see it in store and then go home and buy it. So we're seeing a lot more of that. We're seeing a lot more creative marketing where that's feeding together. But in terms of job loss, here we've lost 200 jobs in retail.
In Wichita?
Yes. And in the same time period, city government gained 300 jobs. So government's growing faster than retail, which should tell you something about that.
I have questions, it's okay. One is, I didn't get to read through all this.
There's a
but,
quiz on it.
I know when. Number 5.
Yes.
Amending the Constitution. That was the one you said you spoke fast.
Yeah.
Could you explain that? That's my first question, is just a little bit more about what that is. Is that a good or a bad? I guess is my question.
To amend the Constitution?
Yeah.
Well, how the Constitution is written now, as the Supreme Court is ruling it, saying that courts get to set basically they go with their funding budget saying this is what we're going to give to schools, and the courts get to say if they like it or not. So you basically have courts acting pretty much as a legislator or a school official saying, okay, this is what schools will get. So they want to amend the Constitution, which has the legislature decides how much money they'll get. They want to amend that to say that the courts don't actually get to decide if that's good or bad. So, because right now the courts have like the final say of, oh, well, you're giving X millions of dollars, that's okay, or you need more. So they basically want to peel back so the courts are the
Okay, so
yeah.
the other question I have relates with the local economy, and that is all the little think tanks going on around here, the Douglas Design District things,
Oh, yeah.
funding for small businesses that farm to table and all that. And, how does that come into play as far as our local economy, do you see that as a good thing? Do you see it as a trendy thing that's, you know?
Government subsidies aren't necessarily bad if they are done in conjunction with other things, and also if they are audited to make sure that what is initially said is going to happen is going to happen. One of the things we find, which kind of drives us crazy, is that the government will give money to a private company to do something, and then we ask the private company, you know, can we see your books to make sure something got done? And they say, oh no, we're a private company. And some private companies will get 90% of their business from the government. It's like, well, we kind of want to make sure.
I was trying to figure out where all the money was coming from. It's all the government, because you see all this.
Yeah.
I had to open my store
Some
by
are
taking out a
separate.
loan on my house.
Yeah.
Nobody gave me anything. And when the city blocked us with road construction, we went belly up.
Yeah.
And had to figure out something else.
They're kind of trendy right now, so it really depends what you're doing and where you're doing it. Federal government has a lot now. The SBA is handing them out. States are handing them out. Cities are handing them out. Incentives aren't necessarily bad if they're holistic, if they're done in conjunction with a lot of other things. We see some counties, more rural counties, like to do incentives at a very, they hand them out freely, often. But we haven't seen any economic data that shows that this is actually helpful. We posted a story not too long ago regarding Allen County. I'm looking at my husband because he had to help. He was my editor on that one. On Allen County, and we kind of took a good hard look at their economy, and they have a good marketing structure for their economy, that they do really, really good things, but the data involving, I believe it was employment and job growth wasn't matching the state average, and it was far below the national. So we were kind of scratching our heads going, you know, you're marketing this as being, you know, big growth area, but then we're not actually seeing that, so.
Well, I just wondered because too, I live in the DDD area, which was totally annoying when they called people artistes. And suddenly the ghetto people, the spray paint people came through and did pathetic, sorry excuses, for the, you know, comic book caricatures where we would have had to look at it from our store. Just ridiculous. And I know real artists, you know, and it's all over this virgin brick that will forever have to be taken care of. It runs mortar. It's, you know, and they came through with political agendas. And so a lot of they had Black Lives Matter over one of the, you know, places, and it was like, that was funded somehow. I mean, it was a grant money. I don't know. I didn't know where it was all coming from. We were not asked in our neighborhood if we wanted, you know, comic books all over our walls and our, you know, historic areas. And then I see that there's just a lot of specific political agendas by a lot of the people that are starting these businesses. I'm thinking, how those young people get them? Does everybody have rich parents? Or, you know, where are they getting this? You know, and then they have political think tanks, and they groom left-wing candidates and stuff. And I've just been watching it from my house going, this is kind of, you know, what's going on.
There are a lot of corporations that do their own sort of thing as well, that set up nonprofits, and so they basically just need to get permission. For buildings, they typically just need to get permission from the person owning the building.
Yeah,
So,
but they also promise to come back once a year, and you know artists always come back once a year, and they will forever be that stable, and they promise to paint over it because it really damages the mortar and the brick, and it forever must be painted. But yeah, I think they caught a lot of people off guard because a lot of buildings hadn't been used. And they thought, hey, we're going to support young people. And then suddenly there's a coat hanger on somebody's, I mean, it's just real obvious political statements that aren't really indicative of the neighborhood. They're indicative of the person that is getting, and then we get the retaliation of the gangs who get mad because they didn't get paid, and they're, I don't know what real means, but it's all over as
Yeah.
well. I just wondered how, where all this came from, and how do they hire somebody full-time who's doing that? They've got a head person. You got,
Well, I have another question. We'll keep it moving.
yeah.
I want to talk about minimum wage.
Okay.
Does the Kansas Policy Institute have a position on minimum wage? I think it's the most ridiculous thing ever. In history, we had maximum wage, and the logic behind maximum wage was if you don't limit the amount we pay the working class, they're just going to have a lot of kids, and we're going to overpopulate. So we're going to put a maximum wage to keep them from overpopulating. And now, yes, it's stupid. Both a minimum wage and a maximum wage are equally stupid, in my opinion. Why can't a free person who wants to be an entrepreneur hire another free person who has nothing better to do than to sit on the couch and maybe collect unemployment or whatever? Why does the government step in between and say, no, you cannot work for $3 an hour and learn a new skill, or maybe even become a business partner or something? You can't do that. True story, I don't want to belabor the point, but I have a family friend living up in North Dakota. She's just a terrific clothing designer. She wanted to start her own business, and she was prevented from doing so by all the labor laws that were, came into play. She could design and build anything she wanted on her own sewing machine, but then when she wanted to sell more and everybody wanted what she made, she would have no problem on sales side, especially with the advent of the internet. The internet was just coming into being then. She could sell as many as she wants, but she can't compete with, trying to do all the government necessities and specifically the minimum wage. So what's the Kansas Policy Institute position on minimum wage? Do you think we can ever get rid of it? Instead of increasing it? My gosh, how stupid can you get? Look what happened to Seattle.
We don't have a specific stance one way or the other on it. We do research around it, but we don't say it's terrible, it's, we.
If you ever have a forum on that, I'd like to speak.
Oh, absolutely.
It doesn't make any sense to have a minimum wage.
There was a bill in front of the legislature, I actually did a story on it, that wanted to raise it to $15 an hour, and we drilled down into all of, we
Why
didn't
not
even,
$150 an hour?
we didn't even look at really employment numbers or anything. We looked at the median wage in the state and how at $15 an hour it actually bypassed the median hourly wage, median meaning middle,
Right.
in these counties, and actually bypassed it.
Not only
So-
would it be inflationary out the wazoo, it would be so inflationary it would be ridiculous. But it would just shut off, people would not hire the person that's not worth $15 an hour. They're not going to be hired, and they're going to be a parasite on the rest of society because they can't work at that level. It's just wrong to have it. I just don't agree with it anyway.
If more is,
Go ahead, Art.
why not go up to $1 million an hour?
Right, why not, why go to 15? Why not go to 150? The Einstein always, that's the way Einstein would think. That's why he was so smart. He would do things at the extreme. He would say, is a little bit of this good or bad? Well, we don't know, but imagine it at the extremes. That's how he did everything from his theories on relativity and so on. Take it to the extreme. All right, so let's not go to 15, let's go to $150 an hour. Is that going to be good or bad? Well, it's going to be destructive. You know that without even thinking very hard. So if 150 is destructive, where do you get the idea that $15 an hour in a community that probably somewhere between $5 and $10 an hour would be the minimum wage where a person would be hired? That doesn't, that should be left alone. Adam Smith would say, the invisible hand will control that. If the person is worth more than the $7 an hour that they're getting, they'll get another job. And the person that's paying that's going to have to pay more. It's a market thing. Your labor is marketable, just like any other product. So anyway, enough on that. Unless somebody else we get anything on minimum wage, we'll leave that topic.
Well, I'm going to extend it.
Go ahead.
This is similar, I think, to the overwhelming number of Kansas state government agencies.
Mhm.
And if you go into a little bit of research and look at salaries within different agency departments, I see an awful lot of, in my opinion, a lot of overpay there.
Gosh, yes.
Just unbelievable. If you look at, for instance, the Department of Children and Families, 2,600 employees, the average annual salary in there is almost up to what a teacher salary is what they're wanting it to be. Some parts of the state, 40,000 a year, some of it 80,000 a year. You know, in these state agencies like DCF, they got 2,600 employees inside of DCF. Where they justify themselves is by criminalizing all the victims in a family situation where you have an abuser in a family, and then everybody else is criminalized because they failed to report, whether they're a mandated reporter or not. That is a big problem we have in DCF in this state, and there's no accountability because they're insulated against state level lawsuits. That's why Appleseed is suing them at the federal level.
Yeah. Yes.
Any other questions? Go ahead. You got a question?
That
Go
gives
ahead.
me an idea.
Mhm.
What's the economic damage done by DCF in Kansas?
Oh, boy. Oh, boy, that's
The FOIA request. I
that's
would
a
need to
loaded
do
question.
that.
I think it's a lot.
That's a loaded
The
question.
FOIA request to do that would probably be in the hundreds of thousands for them to actually get me all of that information. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
Gloria, we're running out of time here. We need to come to a close sooner or later, but well, Ellen, go ahead with your question, and go ahead, Brian, make it concise.
I was going to ask, I have a feeling I probably know the answer, but does the Policy Institute tend to lean closer towards Keynesian or supply side economic theory?
I don't think we've ever actually stated one way or the other. I think one of the things is that we tend to approach all the, well, speaking from the Sentinel side of things, we always approach things from as micro a level as we possibly can. Because a lot of times, I mean, we were talking about, I think the only time we've really gone deep in theory is talking about the stadium. We were talking about Nash's bargaining model as being kind of the dictator of what we saw being done versus what we pushed to have done. So we try to approach the stories at a micro level so we're not bringing theory into it simply because it confuses the heck out of people when we start talking theory. I don't know if I actually answered your question, but we try to try not to dictate if it has to be this theory or else we won't do a story on it. So that helps.
Okay, Ellen, go ahead.
The Kansas Constitution says that education is supposed to be adequately funded, but the
Yes.
Constitution never said who determines what's adequate. That's
Exactly.
why you end up in courts.
Yeah.
Now, you got this, your point 5 in here, the constitutional amendment.
Yeah.
You got to have 84 votes in the House and 27 in the Senate. There were 11 constitutional amendments introduced this session in the legislature. None of them went anywhere.
Oh yeah.
How are you going to get something like that passed?
We're probably not going to get it done this legislative session, but that is something we do feel is important because, you know, for the courts to be able to say, you know, you're basically making them,
Legislators.
yes, and they, you know, they're not that. So,
A lot of
yeah.
people don't like the idea that 7 appointed justices actually have more say over what's adequate
Yeah.
than elected representatives of the people.
Because that nullifies the checks and balances that we thought were there, but they are
Precisely,
not.
but I just don't see how you're going to get that through the legislature, because you're not going to
One
get
day, don't take this away from me, Alan. One day. Yeah.
Just another question is, what is the Kansas Justice Institute? And then secondly, what is the scope of articles from the Sentinel where they strictly?
Mostly economic. We'll cover laws outside of that, but we don't cover social issues unless they have a fiscal side to them. Like we'll never do a story on pro-life or death penalty, not because we have anything one way or the other on them.
That's not what you're all about.
Exactly. That's not our statement, you know. And you had a first part to the question that I was going to ask.
Kansas
Yes.
Justice Institute.
Yes. We actually went to the launch on Tuesday. It is going to be kind of a counterbalance to the ACLU. So they'll take
Maybe we need to hear
cases.
the question again, because I'm lost here.
What the Kansas Justice Institute is. It is a sister.
Is this new or what?
Brand new. Launched on Tuesday. I think the offices are open for business. I think May 15th, I think. It's basically going to be a legal office that is funded privately through donations. It will technically be under the Kansas policy, but it will kind of act separately. It's basically
Is it the Kansas Policy Institute yes, okay, wonderful.
it is our baby. It is our baby.
Okay, wonderful.
So, it's basically going to take court cases and take them through the appeals process if they feel something has been unjustly done. They'll shepherd it through the appeals process. Their goal is to argue in front of the Kansas Supreme Court within a few years, and then hopefully.
Who is heading that up? That's very interesting.
A guy by the name of, I would recommend going to the KPI's website because they have all of that information. I met him, Sam, I want to say Barnesworth or something like that. I almost guarantee you I'm getting the last one wrong.
Is this kind of a contemporary to like the ACLJ?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Kansas, the KPI is that the goal is to report on laws through the Sentinel, recommend policy changes or keeping the policies in place through KPI, and then having a legal arm to repeal those laws for taxpayers where we feel the burden is too much. So it's kind of three-pronged that we can report on the stories, create the policy, and then repeal them if need be. So.
Well, before we let you go,
Yes.
I would like to hear a little bit from you about your world travels, and if you talk about is China going to literally dominate us economically?
No.
Is that ever going to happen?
China's number one fear in the world and their number one enemy simultaneously is China.
China, yeah, probably.
They can't keep their
They're
own
knocking
people in
churches
place.
down these days.
Yeah, no, China's number one fear is China. They will surpass us economically through sheer volume of people. That they're on the course, I think in like 2035. I'm probably getting that date wrong, but it's out of years. But they're not unseating us as a global power by any means. But no, China's whole political landscape is interesting. I can't say too much more than that because I'm pretty sure they tapped my family's phone. So.
You have traveled around the world. Apparently,
Yes.
you've been. Can you talk a little bit about other countries that you've been in, and were you there for your sports reporting? Or
I
were you
was there for sports
economic?
reporting.
Okay.
I worked for a production company that we covered the World Series of Poker, and so whenever they did stops like around the world, like we would go
Right.
and do that. So I traveled extensively. My favorite country was Austria.
Oh, wow.
It's gorgeous. It's wonderful. I loved it. I keep telling him that we're going to go back there. But it's funny because I would say, in speaking with my brother who lives in Vietnam, that one of the things you realize when you travel is that the divide anymore is not between countries; it's between urban and rural. Like that's where the divide is. Like I can, you know, I've lived in New York and LA, and I can go to any big city in the world and have the same experience. I can go to a Starbucks. I can shop where I want.
Right.
And
yeah.
if I can't shop there, I can buy them online back at my home.
Right, yeah. And you can't tell the difference if you're in
Yeah.
Kiev in the Ukraine.
Exactly.
Or in Town West Square, you can be in
Exactly.
the same one, you can't
Yeah.
even tell the difference.
But anymore, the divide is between urban and rural, because if I'm going to go someplace rural, like I'm not going to find anything that I'm familiar with. And that's any rural location in the world.
Right, yeah,
And
it'll
so
be really different.
that's where the
yes.
divide is now. And so you have, you know, people in LA who are like, you know, when they make bizarre comments about the rest of the country, it's like, no, you don't understand. Like, we're not like you
Right,
in
right.
ways that you don't understand. Yeah. So.
Have you been to either the Ukraine or Russia? Either
I've
them?
been to Kiev. I was there
Oh, really?
a short period of time. I remember that poker tournament because we had a problem with stray cats coming in, and that was like, that's my big takeaway from that event, was that there were stray cats everywhere.
What year was that you were in Kiev?
That was 2010.
Wow, very good.
Yes. So, yeah.
It's changing. They're trying to become more and more like America.
Yeah.
They have a big building downtown with it's a government building, and they have painted across not in Cyrillic. They speak, it's always the Cyrillic alphabet, but in Latin letters. They got it in both, actually. You got one side in Latin and the other side in Cyrillic, but it says, "Freedom is our religion." I'm saying, wow.
Oh yeah.
So this is not Russia anymore. So,
It's not, and they like to point that out,
yeah.
as they should.
No, they are really trying to be like America as much as they can.
Yeah.
Well, very good. Any other interesting international
Questions,
things?
comments?
What's the most interesting international event that you had? And then we'll let you go here.
Oh, I had malaria in Uganda. I don't recommend that.
I had malaria in Nigeria.
See?
Yeah, that's not a good story.
I took the anti-malarials and I still got it.
Yeah,
So
likewise, I
yeah.
was doing everything the embassy asked.
Yep.
And I got a bad case of it. And to this day, you and I are not supposed to give blood.
Yep.
Even if they say you
Yeah.
can give blood, you
Yeah.
can't give blood.
They tell you after 7 years, but I walk in and say I had malaria once,
Yeah,
and they're like,
get
get
out
out.
of
Yep. Yep.
You talk about malaria.
Yeah.
I heard a comment this morning I thought was kind of cute. They said measles is growing almost as fast as taxes.
Oh, no. That's pretty bad.
Yes, but there's no vaccine for
Pretty
taxes.
bad. Okay, well, let's give Gloria a big round of applause.
Well, thank you.
Gloria. Appreciate you being here.
Would anyone like something to take home or keep with them? You got 'em? Okay.
You know what? If you
Here.
rather than throwing them away,
No,
I have a box
I
of
was just
of
gonna
nice
take
things.
them home.
Well,
Here.
I would.
Let me leave a few
I would
for you.
treasure a few of those
Yes.
for people that might
Yes.
be interested. And yeah,
There you
I'll take
go.
them. And I'll take these as well, and the
Yes,
ones I
go
have.
for it.
And anybody that doesn't want theirs,
And
give them back
if
to
you
me.
look at
So.
the bottom, you can see our web address. There are probably some things that I misremembered. So feel free to go there and you can check out all we do and all that fun stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Gloria. That brings us up to agenda item J. Time is flying. And if you remember, everybody remembers 2016 because Trump was elected in 2016. But Trump didn't take his first steps to the White House in 2016. He took his first step in the late part of 2015 when he attended the National Federation of Republican Assemblies, and in that Tennessee convention, the people that were supporting Ted Cruz wanted to clean the table. They wanted to not even have a second place runner. Keep in mind we had like 16 people running at the time. I went from Kansas as a Rick Santorum delegate. And before I got there, somebody called me and said, "Have you heard Rick is not coming because Trump is going to be there, and his own campaign wouldn't let him come because of the fear of bad optics if people ran over the top of him trying to get a picture with Trump or something." So, I wasn't going to turn around, so I went ahead and went, and I was already thinking about switching to becoming a Trump supporter. And then after I heard him speak, I joined forces with the only state that was interested in helping, and that was Tennessee, which we were meeting in Nashville. So we had lots of Nashville delegates and lots of Nashville support. And Kansas and Nashville, helped get Trump into second place. And so Ted Cruz didn't wipe the slate. He won, of course, but Trump got second place, and that was the news, that of all 16 of those candidates, he got second place. And so that's where it started, folks. I'm very proud of that. It started in Tennessee, and it started with Kansas and Tennessee backing Trump. Now, if you look at 2015 and you add 4 years, where does that put you? We're there. 2019, we're here. So if you look at your agenda item there, item J, our next presidential preference convention is going to be in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, we may or may not support Trump. Just speaking for me, I'm going to say it's a 99.9% chance that I'll be supporting Trump. I don't know who else is going to run, but anything could happen. God forbid something bad happened to Trump or something like that. But we will again start off the show with the NFRA Presidential Preference Convention in Atlanta, Georgia this time. If you would like to go as a delegate, I'm interested in talking to you. I can bring 7. So, and actually with the numbers I have, I was thinking, if I were to do some real good membership drives and get more people, I wonder if I could backdate and pay for a 2019 membership and increase that number of delegates. So whatever we got, when we get 7 people, then we'll talk about that. But right now, I can take myself and 7 delegates, or I think I'm one of them. I think myself and 6 delegates can vote. And so, if you'd like to go, we need to start planning. It's at your own expense. We'll pay. We could carpool. We could do lots of things, but.
Is there a deadline on?
Yeah, there's deadlines coming up. Right now, it's really cheap to get your hotel. You can get the hotel rooms, and it goes from. I put the dates in here for that reason. It's from the 10th through the 13th, and if you want to get a room in the hotel where the convention is, it's right now. I think you can get the hotel room for like $120 or something like that. Then if you wait another month or 2, it's going to go up to $150. And then if you wait till real late, you'll probably be paying over $200 or near that per night for the room. So the earlier you get in on this, the better. Now you can go and get a hotel room even if you're not going to be a delegate. But if you're going to go, you should go. So in years past, we've had as many as 5 delegates, Kansas delegates going, and we didn't take them all from Wichita. We've taken a few from other surrounding towns, and some from the Kansas City area. And so I would like to make this a good convention in Atlanta, and I don't want to go solo. I want to take at least a few people. And so if you think you want to do it, or if you know somebody that would like to do that, I'll guarantee you it'll be a very memorable thing in your life. Okay, down to the announcements. Item K, if you'd like to be a KRA supporting member, we are open and accepting donations to become, just paying your dues, $10 a year, you can't beat that. We even give you a better deal than that, 3 years for $25. And then of course, if you want to become a supporting member, we give you the Lincoln membership at $100, Reagan membership at $500, and the Trump membership at Team Trump at $1,000. And we would love to have all the help we can get. Again, if you know someone else that would be a good KRA member or might want to be a delegate to go to the convention in Atlanta, save your agenda and share that with them because it's got information on it that's needed. Item L, we've got the pachyderm tomorrow, and tomorrow we have Dr. Eric Sands talking about the Second Amendment. I'm not sure if anybody's interested in that here. Probably everybody in here is interested in the Second Amendment. So that's tomorrow, and I always throw in a pitch here for the Kansas Coalition for Life. We have now grown or added to our list of lifesaver moms. We are at 525 right now. So we've got 2 pregnant, both of them one very needy, and the other one extremely needy. And we've already spent in the vicinity of about $2,000 on her, and we've only known her since January. And so it's going to get worse from here because she's had to quit her job. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, always looking for more help. If you don't want to take a shift out on site, then we'd love for your helping these mothers. All that we do is offer help to moms that are considering an abortion, and 50% of the women that have abortions don't want to do it and are forced into it, usually by financial pressures. And so if we can relieve that financial pressure for them and help them to make a life-saving decision, we always need that kind of help. Our next KRA meeting is May 23rd. This will be a meeting you don't want to miss. Michael O'Donnell, who got his campaign kickoff, and not in this meeting room, but we used to meet at Gable's Cafe or when we were meeting at the Gander Mountain. You know, we used to get 75 people in that a room, not much bigger than this. And but Michael O'Donnell has done a lot with this organization. And for him to have gone through what he went through with the FBI and to find out how empty their charges against him were, and to find out that this was really a payback, that had, you know, it's wrong what happened to him. Anyway, I'm not going to steal his thunder, but I think you're going to probably want to hear the other side of the story. So Michael O'Donnell will be here for our meeting in May, on May 23rd. So mark your calendars for that and come back and listen, because I heard already part of his talk at a pastor's meeting, but he was only given like 5 or 10 minutes, but he had so much to say, and there's so much behind that. Something different has to happen. So anyway, that's the agenda for May. So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I had one.
Go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
I took a moment to check on some of the information about potentially switching to PayPal.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I could gather so far, the fees were between 2.2 and on the smaller transactions like $10 or so, up to like 5% of the transaction.
Okay.
And signing up for it's free.
Okay, if a person doesn't have a PayPal account, then what do we do?
You sign up for free?
No, what I'm saying, no, we have a PayPal account, but
No,
no,
you
if
can take
the
credit
person
cards.
who's wanting to
You
join
take
and pay
credit cards.
membership, huh?
You can take credit cards
Okay,
with the PayPal.
okay, all right. Well, we'll sit down and talk in detail about that, and we'll or if you have something, you can email me on that and let me know,
Yeah.
because we want to move forward on that. I really want to do the membership drive here. There's low-hanging fruit that is not being picked, and we need to pick it. So, any other questions? Anything else? If not, I will take that motion to adjourn.
Sure.
All right, and a second. So we have a motion to adjourn from Brian Koss and a second from Art. And all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.